Had a discussion from Don McGeechy last night about the realities or the potentials of premium markets. We've had some discussion in our essay competition from a large number. In fact, as I said last night, 60 participants in that essay competition. So obviously this issue of the role of premium markets in the future of Australian agriculture is one that engages a lot of people. And we've had two presentations, both fascinating and both coming from different perspectives about the realities of premium markets, and both from organisations that have quite strong track records in being successful in those markets. So I guess it sort of moves our thinking on a bit from being commodity producers and trying to be the cheapest in the market with the biggest volume. So quite an interesting challenge to get around. I guess one of the, Delene mentioned biosecurity, and I know John is also familiar with issues around biosecurity. I mean, we make the claim that Australia is clean and sometimes green as well, which in turn implies that our biosecurity is up to scratch. Do you think that's the reality in international markets? Do you think the perception, or even in the domestic markets, John, do you think there's a perception amongst consumers, for example, that if imported apples came into the country, that Australia has an edge in terms of biosecurity? And I guess the flow on from that is whether we communicate that well enough to the customer base, the reality of that situation.
Yeah. Biosecurity of specifically fire blight, keeping fire blight out of Australia is probably the single most important thing for apples and pears, and that includes the productive apple and pear trees, but also the ones that we see all around cities, all these decorative pears. Every pear tree in Australia will die if we get fire blight into the country. We're one of the few countries in the world that does not have fire blight, and the apple crop will suffer to the tune of about 35% of the trees will literally die. The ones that survive are still slightly susceptible through to very susceptible, and the impact of that is like in New Zealand, like in America, Canada, China. Every apple tree is sprayed with human-grade antibiotics 3 times during the growing season to hold fire blight back. We don't want to see that happen, and I'm sure you don't. So if you're dealing with anyone in terms of biosecurity, put forward that they need to be focused, continue to focus on this. To date, despite the borders being opened for apples to come into Australia, little product has come in because the very good people at Biosecurity Australia have put very strong physical restraints on heavy inspections, zero leaf matter in any product, and that's got to happen before it leaves the country it's coming from. So that's what's holding back imports of apples into Australia. We believe it's very important. It would also devastate every Queen's Park or garden or whatever you call it in every city, a lot of streets, the trees will all die, and every pear tree in the country will die. So it's a pretty serious issue, and we take it very seriously. And anyone who goes visiting, they have to do all sorts of things to come back in the country, to get their shoes and clothes and everything sanitised before they come back.
And the Biosecurity Act is changing. It could be federal, someone in the room will know that, or state, but changing next year. So it's important that we're having conversations on the ground and in boardrooms now about what impact the changes to the biosecurity will have on our businesses in the future.
Mick, you asked about other countries' biosecurity. We're limited in our exporting ability because we're considered, or most of our productive capacity in New South Wales and Victoria are both considered to be endemic for Queensland fruit fly, and that means that China just will not accept an apple Doesn't matter about free trade agreements or anything else. You cannot send an apple from mainland Australia to China. You can from Tasmania. Other countries impose very stringent and, in our view, and Biosecurity Australia's view and DAF's view, that you don't need to do the same cold treatment of apples if they're Queensland fruit fly versus medfly, which other countries have, and they get much better treatment into places like Thailand, which is a very big apple market, but we can't get in there without excessive cold storage costs and treatment costs. Yeah, so it's a problem. It's a benefit, I guess, both ways, the way we'd be managing it, but it's an issue for exports and growing the industry.
I mean, I guess the question was more whether you perceive that customers of your respective products understand that as part of the value proposition, or do you think they take that as given? I guess it's getting to this question of whether we in Australian agriculture talk loudly enough about some of these positives while recognising, yes, they can be barriers as well.
No, I think as an industry, Australian Apple and Pear Limited are sort of set a policy on this that we, as producers, have lined up behind. And we don't really want to go out scaremongering about fire blight and antibiotics on trees, but if there was proposals to shift the current standards for inspection, yes, you'll hear us, because we don't really want to start worrying consumers here. We're instead spending our time working on how do we get pest-free zones in place for production areas so that we can get exemption to go into countries. So we're spending our efforts in that area looking at the exports rather than trying to sort of fight something that at the moment isn't causing us a problem.
And a focus on biosecurity is not just necessarily a focus on keeping pests and disease out of Australia. It's a focus on preparing yourself and your businesses and our industry for what to do in a crisis. So we feel at AB Organic, if we can champion the biosecurity preparedness of organic beef producers and also the organic beef industry, if there is a crisis that shuts down the industry for one reason or another, that our producers may get market access back before other states or territories or something like that. So I think you can think of it as a negative in keeping disease out, but you can also think of it as a positive in getting market access back really quickly.
Question to John. Michael O'Keefe, Premier Fruits Group. John, love the way you've gone with the independent fruiterers. I think it's easy to forget that we do have a vibrant premium retail sector, but they're independent butchers, fishmongers and fruiterers that are hard to reach. So the question a little bit on the detail of how you actually manage the relationship with those wholesalers through the wholesale market. Your choice, how many wholesalers you have.
Yep.
You talked about short term, not sending them product tomorrow, but how do you work with them over the longer term?
Yeah.
And then I suppose a follow-up question to Darlene, with your channel, what's your experience reaching the independent butchers as a premium market in Australia?
Yeah. Look, the simple answer is we keep the number of wholesalers as low as we can to a controllable number depending on the size of the market. So, for example, in Victoria we have one premium quality wholesaler, and we've been with that wholesaler now for 26 years, something like that. We spend time with them, talk to them every day, tell them what's happening, and the greengrocer customers of theirs know where to go and they know what to buy. We do have a distributor down there who isn't approved for premium quality fruit, and he operates in that market as well, but he only operates with lower quality produce. And we have a share of that we have to move. So obviously we need channels for that. But for example, in Sydney we have 4 of the wholesalers there. So I don't know exactly how many are in the wholesale market there, but it's a lot. Some of those wholesalers, for example, one of them would move 45% of our product. So they are like our cornerstone supplier, but there are reasons why we want more than one. Our contractual arrangements are, in our view, a bit innovative compared to what others have. We renew them annually, so if someone's going to stay on our panel of wholesalers, then they have to deliver. And they know it, and most of them do, all the time. If they're not, then we have a discussion with them. So it was interesting, there's recent horticulture code of conduct reviews just been completed, and we did, confidentially, we did disclose how we manage that relationship with the reviewers, and I don't know if any of that will find its way into the code, but if it does, it'll be good for producers, because the way that we make that relationship work, you know, it's a result of many years of negotiation with wholesalers, and I guess they are proprietary to us, so I'll decline to give you what exact conditions they are, Michael. But they work, and they're delivering. So and we keep them honest by being in the market every day. Anything that happens, we know about it. And
so you're in the Melbourne market as well as the
not as regularly in Melbourne, no, but in Brisbane we are, and in Sydney, yeah.
And Michael, to your question about premium butchers, we find that the really high-end premium butchers in Australia have relationships with very, very niche beef brands, be it Wagyu, grass-fed, grain-fed, that are often, well, grain-fed, not so niche, but certainly the grass-fed producers normally source their meat from within a 2 or 3 or 500 kilometre radius of Sydney or Melbourne or something like that. Our success has been with probably not the super high-end niche butchers, but somewhere in between them and everyone else is we've got consumers out there that are going to their local butchers demanding an organic beef offering, and so those butchers are providing that usually through a ground beef offering. So they have usually mince available in their butcher shops, and then they might have an organic mince as a leaner offering.
Deb.
Thanks. Deb Kerr from Australian Pork Limited. Daleen, I'm really interested having, I suppose, a question to you about your premium niche product into particularly Asian markets. For meat, there's a lot of counterfeit, fraud and so on happening. What are you doing to protect the reputation and IP around your product into those markets for somebody that might want to perpetuate to be your product but isn't?
So I guess we have a lot of trademark. We invest heavily in trademark protection. Last year we spent between $50,000 and $100,000 on protecting trademarks, starting to protect trademarks in various markets around the world. It's an ongoing process. It costs a lot of money. Also, we have a lot of customers on social media telling us what's going on in the market. So we think we're aware when our product appears somewhere it shouldn't, and we're onto it straight away. So it's those eyes on the ground that are really useful. And if we want to know what's going on in the market, we just do a promoted post on Facebook and target, you know, millennial mums in Taipei in a certain age group that shop at these 5 retailers, and ask them to go take photos and they'll win a prize or something like that, and then we get all this intelligence coming back to us. So if we needed to, we haven't had to.
Where's Chris? Chris, I think, was next, and then David.
Actually, Richard Dickon.
Oh, Richard, sorry.
That's right, no problems.
I think it was Chris.
Yeah, John, I just had a question for you, and the role of variety development, like having, you know, IP-protected varieties. I mean, you've described an excellent process, but obviously fairly demanding one to maintain your distribution network. And I'm wondering if you do get access to those overseas markets, it's going to be somewhat more difficult. And again, as always, everyone's got a New Zealand story. I was there recently talking about their golden kiwi, where I think the returns to growers went from $25,000 per hectare, or it was either returns or turnover, up to $77,000, and became an export brand, exported all over the world, and the values and were you know, encaptured in that IP protected variety. So are you working in that space as well, and how important do you think that is?
Yep. We certainly are. Was it Richard, was it? Yep.
Yes,
Richard,
sorry, that was my mistake.
We, at the cooperative today, doesn't just process and store fruit for our members. We're actually the largest grower. So we've been buying orchards, and we produce about 30% of the fruit ourselves off our own orchards. And variety management has been a focus for, look, it's probably 6 years now. We are currently the largest grower of a new apple variety called Kanzi. Kanzi gets marketed through a standalone marketing group, which does have representation from the people growing it, so we're on that committee. But we also have negotiated that wholesalers we nominate can sell that product. So we're still getting control of the distribution through to the final independent retailer. And we've offered a lot of our experience in actual in-store marketing and campaigns and all of that by having our staff on that planning committee that makes all those decisions. It's a vital part of the whole apple industry. Variety renewal is happening. You know, we've got rid of Sundowners, Bonzers, Jonathans. You can name heaps of them that have all been pushed out in the last 10 years in Batlow. Varieties that Batlow was renowned for, like the Bonzer. You know, there's none of them left in town except a few small growers that grow them for the roadside stall market. So the returns are stronger because the marketing is more controlled and the power is moved away from a purchasing person in a major retail store. The price is fixed. Quite a considerable amount of money from the sale price goes into marketing, and returns are definitely much stronger. And so we are involved in that, and we've got about 5 varieties now that are under that. But we still add value ourselves, then that we can move our fruit faster because our wholesalers also promote the fact it was grown in Batlow. So we're getting a bit of provenance as well as getting the new variety. Yeah.
Okay.
David Sackett. Question for Daleen, or 2 questions really. One of the challenges in any agriculture supply chain is the peaks and troughs of supply, whereas the market tends to want continued even supply. And unlike apples, we can't put cows in a cool room and take the oxygen out for 6 or 9 months and then open the door and expect them to be edible. So how do you deal with that volatility issue on both the peaks and the troughs? And the second thing is, what's been the benefit to producers from the whole OBI process or the OBI business? How much better off are they?
So your first question is the peaks and troughs of supply. So we see this happen. There's a lot of people buying organic livestock in Australia now, and so their producers have a lot of choice, and so they're obviously trying to supply the company that pays the best money. And when that company's often some of the big boys of the industry, and when they turn it off, when they turn off their requirements, we see those producers coming back to say hello to us. I think we manage that through pricing grids. So we're trying to optimise, understand the right product for the right market and optimise our grids to secure that livestock and encourage producers to understand why we're doing that and to produce the optimal animal for us. The benefits to supplying OBI Organic is it's around OBI and other cooperatives try to create and share more value for producers. So we're trying to help producers be sustainable and profitable. We understand that some of the big guys in the industry say the same thing. We say it differently. I guess you've got to decide if OBI's a finisher or a substitute. And we think it's really important that companies like OBI and cooperatives are encouraged to thrive in this industry. it's important that all companies are trying to optimise what we do, but if there's no OB organics and no cooperatives, then it's a worry for industry. So we think there's an important reason why producers should supply livestock or consider supplying their livestock to different buyers in the industry. So we think the days of producers just aligning themselves to one buyer are gone. We think it's important that producers have tools in their toolbox. So we encourage producers to seek out certifications like Organic, EU, PCAS, which is a grass-fed cattle assurance scheme. And that puts the power back in the hands of producers. So then they have a choice. They can put their cattle into the EU market. There's a range of buyers for that. They can put their cattle into the grass-fed market when the prices are right, or when the cattle are in a certain condition. And equally, they've got a choice in the organic market as well. So I think producers need to have tools in their toolbox.
Delene, that I guess would be the notion that a lot of cooperatives in Australia have expressed over a long time, but ultimately it gets down to the hard bottom line, doesn't it? Do producers perceive that there's a margin there that makes it worth their while? Obviously.
Going organic?
Well, not just going organic, but there's obviously other alternatives in the marketplace. Can OB offer perhaps better supply chain arrangements, or
we see a lot of organic producers being pretty savvy and spreading their risk by having lots of different certifications, and we don't have a problem with that. So we believe organic agriculture is really important. We believe that there should be less antibiotics and chemicals used in agriculture. And if those producers choose to supply us their livestock 50% of the time, and the rest of the time put their livestock into high-value EU or grass-fed markets, then that's a good thing for industry.
Okay. Matt.
Yeah, Matt Brand, New South Wales Farmers. I guess this is a question to both panellists. Do you see an opportunity to actually create a parent brand for agriculture? It seems that when you look at fast-moving consumer good companies, Kellogg's a good example, where they have the Kellogg's parent, which is all about provenance, wholeness, drives human nutrition, and then they've got their brands, sub-brands that sit underneath. When I look at agriculture, I think one of the challenges is the scale, and we do lots of different things, lots of promotions, but often we have a lot of things thrown at our sector, and it feels to me that, I'd be interested in your view on whether there is a role for a parent for agriculture, which your brands can then sit underneath. That parent takes care of environmental stewardship, water issues, animal welfare issues, and then your brands contribute to that parent, and the parent contributes to you. So it builds and drives scale around, consumer trust, etc.
I think that's something that me personally I'd be comfortable supporting when we get corporate governance right in agriculture. So there's a way to go on that, and I think when we start making an effort to improve what we're doing on boards and within boards, and I think the conversation will then lead in the right direction. So I think there's some more work that we need to do at grassroots level in our farming organisations, be that in horticulture or beef, to improve that.
Matt, I'm not sure unless we get into a large amount of export for apples that we would see a parent brand helping in any way. The industry as a whole, with the exception of a few like us, moved to an Aussie apple sticker about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. What we've seen from that is now there's a whole bunch of those producers now trying to co-brand their own brand on their Aussie apple sticker, and now wishing they hadn't stopped doing it, because now they've got to the point where the majors are demanding that it is an Aussie apple sticker. So they've actually created probably the enemy of what they were trying to create. They were trying to hold out imports, but in effect they've now commoditised themselves, and now it's lowest bid. Because the apple in the store all look the same, they've all got an Aussie sticker on them. So in some cases I think it's actually a serious negative thing. And a number of those owners of those operations are wishing they hadn't gone that pathway. I can see for export a very good thing, but you know, you'd still have to have very good, I think, comments about governance and standards would be an integral part. We can't get producers in our industry to agree to a standard. You know, so they went ahead and adopted this new label without having a standard. So it's just, you know, just not a very good thing to do. And so we didn't go with it, and we've stayed with our own brand, and we've been happy to do it.
Thanks, Mick. Malcolm Wagner from University of Queensland. And perhaps both of you could comment on whether you see premium brands as something for everybody, or is it always going to be restricted to a few or the small number of quite innovative producers and marketers? I mean, I guess John's example mentioned that they still have to have an outlet for their poor quality fruit. If we look across agriculture and in the broad scale, there's going to be a whole range of producers, some of which are able to deliver premium product and maybe can market it as such. And then there's the rest of them who are perhaps going to have lesser quality attributes. Is it always going to be something for the more innovative, outgoing producers, or do you think the broad scale of broad runner producers can capture premium?
So I can speak about the beef industry. I think there's a difference between innovative companies and branding. So JBS is a big beef company with abattoirs in Australia, and they have a number of brands under them that are really smart, that communicate what they're doing really well. So there's a place for that in beef in Australia. There's also a place for the smaller niche brands, like some of the Wagyu brands coming through, that have the ability to supply the local markets and meet the need of some consumers for locally sourced food. So I think there's a difference between small companies and big companies, and small companies that brand and communicate really well, and big companies that have brands that they communicate really well about.
Yep. Thanks, Malcolm, for a difficult question. Producers, I touched on quality standards. For everyone to share in a premium, they'll all have to be able to deliver on the same standard. And one of the things in agriculture that I've seen over many years is the individualistic behaviour of the average producer. And they are very, very individualistic, and that's why they're in farming, and they will behave individualistically. And we see players trying to increase their pack-out yield by putting lower quality in a carton, and of course all that happens is they get a lower price in our market. We take the opposite view. We pack to a quality standard, and we produce a higher quality product at a higher price, but then we do what we can for that mid-range product. So, you know, unless you could find a recipe to get all those individual people to work together and meet the same standards, I can't see those people ever getting access to that market. And I think that's why the retailers that we supply, they look for our green box and they just say, that's what I want. If there can be a whole market full of apples, and they'll go to those first, and when ours are all gone, then they'll start looking at the next one, because they know they're going to get home and the fruit's all going to be okay. And I just can't see anyone being able to change that in the short term.
We'll take,
Jay Horton, Strategis Partners. Question to both speakers, Aileen and John. To what extent is your premium strategy supported by investments by your industry's research and development organisations.
So does that include Meat and Livestock Australia?
Yes.
So we access their, it's called now their Collaborative Marketing Program, and we co-fund marketing activities that we do in export markets around the world. We don't qualify for support in the domestic market because none of our beef is MSA graded. So we qualify for that in export markets. So certain marketing activities qualify, and we co-fund as much as possible. We asked for a lot of money from them, or well, what we consider a lot of money from them in this financial year, and we got about half of what we asked for. So we're spending that really quickly, and hopefully other companies have underspent and will get access to a bit more. So we can't complain. Meat and Livestock Australia have been really supportive of what we're doing, but equally I think it's a win-win situation for them. We talk about our collaboration, we support what they're doing, we promote them as innovators in the industry. We try and we try not to reinvent the wheel at Obi, so we try and find out what people are doing in industry that's really good and jump on the bandwagon. So, yeah.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of things that we do in terms of R&D. There's a lot of information gathering that's required to grow good quality apples, and we are involving ourselves in a number of projects that are some of them funded HIA, some are funded through APEL, which I guess sometimes it's the same money, but we are believing that to get a higher quality of fruit off an orchard, you need to do a number of things. You need to have good prediction for weather and pests, so when you're going to get a codling moth fly and when you have to do something, or black spot with rain and spraying and all that. And we've invested locally in our own weather stations, which are linked up to an app on the mobile phone network, and all our growers can log in and find out when they put in when they sprayed last with what, at what strength, and it will tell them when they need to do it again or how much rain they can put up with before they have to do it again. So we're probably leading the group a little bit in that. What we're trying to do is get the best quality fruit presented to us so we get less of that lower quality. The next gains will come in when to make the decision for thinning flowers on a tree. So when you've got enough flowers of set, it's very low cost to spray a bit of nitrogen on the flowers and burn the rest off once you've set your crop. At the moment, that's very hard to do. It's hard to tell with the human eye, but Sydney Uni have got some very smart people who have been working on this, and we're putting together a project now to take that machinery so it can go out on its own at night and scan the orchard and come back and tell us whether we're ready to spray. And that will give us lower cost, it'll give us better control for fruit sizing, it'll give us more information as the fruit grows. We'll be able to see day by day or once a week how fast it's growing, and do we need to root prune or do we need to fertilise. So there's a lot of things coming, and we're staying in the front of that by being in the research. Yeah.
Snow and then
Snow Barlow, University of Melbourne. Really almost a technical question for you, John. The quality criteria that you use for your apples, are they quantitative criteria, and are they objectively applied through your grading, your grading machines? And I guess there's another sort of question around that. The fact that there are other specialised machines, the resistance of perhaps other growers to adopting, rigorous quality criteria, is that around perhaps the capital investment they might have to make in similar machines?
Look, the short answer, Snow, is that the machine is still inferential because it's non-destructive. So we do get indications of bricks, starch, but they're inferential off near infrared, so it's as you understand that it's all inferential, and yes, we cut a certain amount, we sample the juice, we do a starch test to make sure the machine's calibrated as close as we can. But as I say, it is inferential. But they're not cheap machines. That machine costs us annually, 300,000 a year to keep that machine running. That's without mechanical maintenance costs. That's just the licensing cost to have the technology. So yes, small producers don't have the machine and may never have it. It's one of the reasons why we believe there needs to be some consolidation in packing in the country. Freight cost is now lower than the cost of what that technology is worth. Now, a lot of growers haven't quite understood that yet. Some have. We've got growers that send fruit from Orange to pack on our line because they get a better outcome. So, some of them are starting to come around to understand that economically they're better off going through a better plant. In terms of the quality criteria, we actually do destructive testing when the fruit is received, and our field service people are doing it in the field before harvest. So they're measuring maturity, and the maturity when we receive it basically drives the decision on how long we will store it for. So we've got some skilled staff that interpret the data and then make the decision how long to store that particular delivery for. But it's still very small numbers. You'll get 2,000 apples in a bin, and there might be 30 bins on a truck, and we take 5 apples from each bin. So it's still, it's still a very low, whatever you want to call it, sampling rate. But you don't want to destroy too many. It's a lot of fruit when you're putting 45,000 bins away.
Okay, we might take one more question. I know we're cutting into lunch already.
Okay, quick question. If you think about meat consumption, nowadays it's usually meat with adjectives. That is, it's free-range pork or it's hormone-free. You're no longer eating meat, but you're eating a suite of adjectives. So when it comes to looking at premium markets, how do you determine which is going to be the next adjective that delivers value, be it free range or hormone free? So how do you find out what are the taste changes or the trends that are going to underpin the production change that delivers the price premium?
Well, I guess we've been ahead of the curve for the last 20 years. What we see now is a lot of beef companies in Australia, I see their product is grain-fed 100 days, and then it's grain-fed 80 days, and then it's free range, and then it's grass-fed, and then it's antibiotic-free. So I'm not sure if it's still the same animal or the production system's changed. I think that the leaders of those companies are getting different messages from their marketing team and consumers about what they want. Market preferences do change. So I know the big companies would have lots of dollars to go and do consumer testing before they enter markets, like the Middle East. If Procter & Gamble are going to go into the Middle East with a new bath soap, they'd probably spend hundreds of thousands of dollars canvassing exactly what the market wants, or what branding message should be on the box of soap. We don't have those type of funds, so we have to take an educated guess by looking at both looking at the natural and organic space, the fresh shelf, I guess, and see how other companies are branding their products. And often we would go to market with the message, and then we would tweak it. A simple example is when we first launched in Dubai, we had a sticker that said Aussie organic beef, and we did a focus group, which happened to be, we invited 5 ladies for a cup of coffee at an organic cafe, and we showed them some photos of our product, and they said, "Oh, this is terrible. We don't know what Aussie means." And I said, "What do you mean you don't know what Aussie means?" And they said, no, you've got to put Australia, and you've got to put a map of Australia. I'm like, I need a map of Australia and Australia. Another example, so we tweaked our labelling a little bit. So it's really basic stuff, but we don't have the big budgets that Procter & Gamble have. Also in Japan 20 years ago, grass-fed was considered much lower quality than grain-fed. So we didn't market our product as grass-fed in Japan, we marketed it as organic. In the US, however, pasture-fed is really popular. So actually the word pasture-fed and grass-fed is more prominent on our labels than the word organic. So you've got to be agile enough to find out if your product's not selling as well as you think it is in a market, then go and do some focus group in whatever capacity you've got to do it and find out how you should be tweaking what you're saying. But it's really important to be authentic. So as I said, in the beef industry, we see a lot of brands coming on now that are trying to be everything to everyone. So they've got a big grain-fed program, and they've also got an organic program or a grass-fed program, and you know, it's difficult. So I think you have to remain authentic and make sure you always tell the truth.
Did you want to comment, John, or are you right there?
No,
Okay.
I won't stop lunch.
Thank you both very much for your presentations and conversations. I think the thing that strikes me in relation to both those presentations is the extent of resources and investment in customer contact, customer listening, customer understanding. I think you know, the notion that you can just churn out a premium product and someone will pay for it seems to be a long way from the reality of both the businesses that we've had talking to us today. And Darlene, the social media side of it is certainly fascinating. I guess social media has been considered as a way to speak, but perhaps hasn't been considered as a way to listen in the way that you've described. So I think that's probably food for thought for a lot of people in the room.
And for the benefit of the comms people in the room and the CEOs and directors listening, make sure please, I encourage you to resource your comms team with some smart people and some money for social media. So an analogy is you've got a company that turns over $20 to $100 million, plenty of those in the room here. You don't put a apprentice jockey on your Group 1 mare or stallion. So, you know, spend some money and on social media and get it right.
Okay, there's a good lesson for everyone. I'd ask you all to thank both our speakers in this session.